over the many years I played a decent amount of games and made content about some of them for the channel. Now, if you would do a quick scroll through my videos, you will notice that JRPGs, or just Japanese related games, are the most common games I play. And I would argue that those are my favorite types of games to play these days. However, back in the day, when I was younger, this was not the case. There was one genre that I focused on and was heavily invested in, but it was not JRPGs or Japanese related games. No, they were theme park builders. Now, of course, the mother of all theme park builders, Rollercoaster Tycoon 1 and 2, were on the very top of my list. And while the series kinda fell off over the years, the genre itself lives on in Parketect and Planet Coaster. However, there was another game in the genre that I really loved back in the day, that being Theme Park World. The developer Bullfrog Studio took the term theme from theme park, dialed that up to 11, mixed in silly humor and the rule of cool to create this weird yet awesome theme park builder. Unfortunately, Bullfrog Studio never got the chance to expand this game or improve on it with the next installment, as it got snatched by the devil. And ever since then, there have been attempts to do something similar like Theme Park World, but it never seemed to really work. But here we are, reviewing a new game that is going to take a shot at it. Introducing Park Beyond, a game that advertises itself as a theme park builder with a similar over-the-top, ridiculous, silly, yet fun and cool tone like Theme Park World. And of course I was very excited for this game. Not only did the trailer strike the tone very well, but when I viewed some gameplay of it, it seemed like the developer paid close attention and learned from the past and its current competitors. But let's put my excitement a little bit on a hold and ask the question, is it going to pick up the torch for this style of theme park builder? Or did it become overly ambitious? Or is this style of theme park builder just out of style? Well, let's find out in this review. In Park Beyond, you are recruited by Cloudstormers to save the company from bankruptcy with your unique ride and roller coaster designs. Together with a ragtag team that consists of a Willy Wonka-style Imagineer, a clever engineer, a cheap-ass CEO, a stuck-up rules-are-rules safety inspector, and a quirky adrenaline junkie, you set off to revive old parks, build new ones, and face all the challenges that come with it. Theme park builders are usually not known for their stories, or even known to really have one beside a simple premise. So it's nice to see that Park Beyond has one. And while its story premise is very simple and very similar to other theme park builders, it does go the extra mile here and there. It is, however, very clear from the start that the game is not here to tell you a deep, emotional or meaningful story. It wants to be just like a theme park itself. It wants to be a good time. And for most of the time, it actually is. It plays in very well with the over-the-top, ridiculous, silly, yet fun and cool tone the game tries to set. The characters themselves work off each other greatly, mainly because they are these over-the-top stereotypes that I described at the beginning. And while the humor can be a very hit or miss for me, I did see where they were going for, and it got a few laughs out of me once in a while. Interestingly enough, they did try to spice up the experience of the story with dialogue choices. What is even more interesting is that these dialogue choices actually have an impact on your game in terms of park goals and style of how you want to play. However, they are very on the nose about what your choice does and doesn't do. On top of that, they are not permanent choices, as after every situation you are offered dialogue choices, you can easily go back and change whatever you picked. Overall, what the story does here, it does it alright. It sets and matches the tone the game is going for, which in my opinion was the one thing the story had to do. Because again, it's not here to tell you a deep, emotional or meaningful story. This game is a theme park builder, and that's what I'm here for. And on that aspect, the game does not waste any time. Right out of the gate, if you play the story mode first, you get to explore and build a roller coaster, instantly showing off the most important element of the game and teaches you the basics. If you played a game like Planet Coaster, the way you construct coasters is very similar. It uses a spline system where you just click and drag to build your roller coaster. But the game does offer a grid and more detailed ways to build your roller coaster as well. I did like the fact that the game instantly starts off with you building a roller coaster, and while this opening served as a tutorial, I felt not constrained by it whatsoever. It gave a lot of room to explore the crazy stuff you can do with this system. Because this game does not want you to build normal roller coasters. Instead, it wants you to go on a path of weird coaster elements and probably lethal levels of G-forces and such. Basically, think of those YouTube videos where everyone builds death parks, but this time the game promotes you doing so. Because as long as your ride makes it to the end, people will ride it and be happy about it. Now, after you finish building your first roller coaster that goes right through a city, you start building parks, and from there the game becomes what you would expect. A more normal theme park builder. You got to provide rides, stalls and services for your guests, and of course keep them happy throughout their stay in your park. Now, at first glance, the rides and stalls themselves do not advocate the particular tone that the game wants. Instead, early game is more focused on management than anything else. In the beginning, you have to make sure that the layout of your park is good, that queues for the rides are long enough, that food and drink stalls are spread evenly through the park, and that there is enough staff to maintain it all and clean up after your guests. Because a badly managed park here will get a bad rating and will go bankrupt. After this initial start of your park, where management is key, your attention and gameplay will slowly start to shift towards upgrading your park and creative choices. And the game itself, that will start to pick up on its particular tone. If you run your park properly, you will unlock new rides and coaster elements, but also gain amazement over time. With this amazement, you can impossify rides, stores, and even staff. When you impossify something, you basically add the special, over-the-top, ridiculous, silly, yet fun and cool sauce over it. Staff will get weird machines to help them with their tasks. Stores get these pop-up decorations, and rides is where this game went all out. You go, for example, from a basic pirate ship ride to one where it splits off in 3 different sections that also make full loops and everything. Or a simple teacup ride suddenly has Medusa coming from underneath it, throwing the guests around with her hair. Like I said, the game goes all out, all overboard on its tone at this point, and I like it. The Impossify system plays in heavily on a feeling of progression and management, as an impossified ride, stall or staff member has a huge impact on your park. More guests are lured to the park and whatever you impossified, but it also heavily impacts your overall rating, which ripple throughs to other things. But for me, the visual spectacle alone makes it such a fun and worthwhile system. Whenever the moment arrived that my park accumulated enough amazement to impossify the ride, it felt like an explorer's quest, as you don't know at the start what a ride becomes when impossified. Therefore, it's safe to say that sometimes my curiosity got in the way. Now, it takes some time to accumulate enough amazement to impossified rides, and that is where the before mentioned creative choices comes into your experience. Just like in other modern theme park builders, there's a lot of emphasis put on creative building and decorating your park. The game offers a decent amount of themes to work with and a placement system that is almost unlimited in its possibilities. However, this is where, in my opinion, the game lost itself a little. Because while it's nice to have so much creative options, it does create a similar problem I had with Planet Coaster. Once you reach this part of the game, you are putting loads of hours into more or less designing your park rather than managing it. Now, to combat this problem, there is of course standard blueprints you can use and a community to get more from. But if you want to make your park look pretty, you must invest a lot of time into it. And that comes on top of the hours managing your park and loads of time that goes into designing your custom roller coasters, as those also take a lot of time. Now, at first this feels like a nice change of pace from managing your park, as that is what you will do all the time at the beginning. But ultimately, once those aspects get pushed far into the background, building scenery and such does become solely the endgame. And that is a similar problem I had with Planet Coaster. However, Park Beyond has one major advantage here, which is that visually the rides and such already look great on their own, and as you upgrade them, easily can make up for low effort in building scenery and placing decorations. However, that is where the select few advantages that Park Beyond has end. Which sounds very weird to say, as Park Beyond seems like it has everything it needs to be a good theme park builder. However, in execution of all its elements, Park Beyond is very clumsy and lacks polishing across the board. Throughout my entire playthrough, it felt like I was wrestling constantly with many design choices of the game. This varied from simple things like path snapping and heat maps to fundamental problems of painting rides and buildings or just using the grid system. Like, if I paint a ride, wouldn't it be great that every aspect of the ride would be painted in the color I select? Why can't I paint blueprint buildings in an overall menu? Why do I need to instead have to painstakingly paint each individual part? Why does decoration items and rollercoaster track randomly fly off the screen, thereby also resetting settings that I had set up with the grid system or a particular track I was working on? Why can't I instantly use the fine choose movement option when I have an item selected? Why are there so many menus so chaotic to browse through and to look at? And why have heat maps when most of them don't give you actual information that you can use? And I could go on like this for another 20 to 30 minutes easily. But I won't. I just hope that this describes a little bit how much of a wrestling match this game can be. On top of all this, there are some other things I also would like to highlight. First up, the lack of roller coaster types. There are plenty of rides to choose from, but when it comes to coasters, there are only 3 of them, and their difference is very small and almost purely visually. All types can do the same coaster elements and are not limited in any form or way that differentiate themselves from one another. Guests will also not prefer a type of coaster over the other, as their preference is based on the hook system for a coaster, not the coaster itself. A good way to make coasters look different from one another is to change their train types, and there's a lot of options here to pick from. Yet you can't program block sections or allow multiple trains on the same track. So it's great that building a roller coaster is fun and the system you use for it is easy to learn and works perfectly. But everything else around it feels very unfinished and lackluster. And the same goes for the community shared assets. It's great that the option is there to share and use assets created by other players, because it solves a reoccurring problem that this game has. But the game does not use the Steam Workshop for that and instead has its own created system. Now, you can easily make some solid arguments that the Steam Workshop ain't a perfect system, and I would agree to some of them as well. But if you offer an alternative, the least it could do is be on par or even better than what it tries to replace, which is not the case in Park Beyond. In the end, all these things started to pile up, be it all these questionable design choices to the community sharing, the lackluster roller coasters, or anything else really. It all started to make Park Beyond feel like a knockoff version of what came before. The developers clearly paid very close attention to the old and new theme park builders and wanted to do the things that made those good and popular, yet at the same time they tried to reinvent the wheel, which created many problems and made them feel so unnecessary. And it's very unfortunate that this happened, because its potential of being good is clearly there and very noticeable in your experience if you put up with its shenanigans, so to say. Yet I reached a point I got tired of it, meaning I had to find ways to enjoy the game as much as possible by avoiding a lot of these problems. Therefore, halfway through the game, I rarely wanted to build custom roller coasters, and I tried to be as simple and direct as possible with decorations and such. Considering everything I said so far in this review, it's just a shame to conclude in the end that Park Beyond is so close in being actually alright and even in certain aspect a really good game. Yet that is all what it is. It's just so close, but it's just not there yet. Maybe in the future, as some parts could be fixed with updates, which they are by the way trying to do, but only time will tell if that will make the difference. Now, if you are interested in this game, I would highly recommend you to consider your willingness to wrestle with this game's design choices and annoyances, as that will make or break this game for you. If you choose to wrestle with it, you will have some fun moments with the game and enjoy it to a certain degree. But if not, then unfortunately I would not recommend to get this game.